I'm Anne-Marie Malik, and I'm the President and CEO at West Park Healthcare Center. I also happen to be a registered nurse, and it is a great pleasure to welcome you, Premier Ford, back to West Park for another visit, and to have you, Minister Fullerton, on the Zoom call with us today and having our first introduction directly to you. So we're just delighted that you both were able to join us during this celebration of Nursing Week. We're also thrilled, of course, to have Doris Greenspun and the RNAO team. We have a number of nurses and staff from the Extendicare long-term care home here at West Park. And of course, we have a number of our nurses from West Park and our board chair, Charlie Raitt. I'm pretty sure I saw Charlie come on a few minutes ago. So first and foremost, Doris, thank you to you and your team for coordinating this annual event under somewhat unusual circumstances. And we're really appreciative of the technology that's available to make this happen. And of course, a very special thanks to you, Premier Ford, and to you, Minister Fullerton, for everything that you and your government are doing to keep us all safe during the pandemic, and in particular for taking the time today to join us for this brief celebration of nurses during Nursing Week. As we all know, 2020 is the year in which we are celebrating the 200th anniversary of Florence Nightingale's birthday, and that was actually yesterday. The World Health Organization declared 2020 the year of the nurse and the midwife. So this is a very special Nursing Week this year because of that. The theme of this year's Nursing Week celebrations is a voice to lead. And that could not be more fitting of our current situation during the COVID pandemic. COVID, as we all know, has posed many, many challenges. And this morning, what we have organized is an opportunity to share with you both the many ways and the various roles through which our nurses are responding to the pandemic. And you will hear from our nurses directly in just a moment. But first, I'd like to acknowledge that nurses all across the province, and in fact, all across the country, in many different care settings and in many different roles, are going above and beyond each and every day to care for their patients, and in the most difficult of circumstances, making it even more important this year for us to be celebrating Nursing Week. It's truly and sincerely heartbreaking that I must also take a moment to acknowledge last night's tragic passing of one of our very dedicated nurses, Brian Beattie, who worked at Kensington Village in London and was, by all media accounts, a dedicated and compassionate nurse who cared deeply for the residents in that home. I know from our own experience at West Park that this is a really tragic loss for an organization, and my heart goes out to his family, his friends, and his colleagues. We will all grieve in that loss. As we know, COVID has touched all of us, and I think that we can agree that this news hits very, very hard, especially during Nursing Week. Premier Ford and Minister Fullerton, I want to acknowledge that here at West Park, we also see the tireless efforts of our nurses here at the center and the long-term care center in going above and beyond in the face of work that is both physically and emotionally challenging and has required of them many personal sacrifices, especially during the pandemic. We are very fortunate, and I am very proud to say that our nurses here at West Park have risen to the challenge, and they've done so with compassion, with dedication, and with grace. And on that note, one of those nurses is our Chief Nursing Executive, Kim Cook, and I'm going to turn it over to Kim.
Thank you, Anne-Marie, and good morning. I am Kim Cook, as Anne-Marie said, and I'm the Vice President of the Clinical Programs here, and as well the Chief Nursing Executive at the hospital. I'm very proud to be a nurse, and also to be very proud to be working with such a dedicated and courageous team of nurses here at West Park. As you know, West Park is committed to delivering exceptional care to our patients and families. We achieve excellence in care by implementing our best practices to inform our practices and care at the center. We are very proud to be a designated best practice spotlight organization, designated by the Registered Nurses of Ontario, who are here today. The hospital was designated in 2006 and has maintained that designation for the past 14 years. West Park has implemented 25 best practice guidelines to date and is truly committed to continuing to implement further best practice guidelines to ensure excellence in care continues. West Park is also working with the RNAO in implementing the best practice spotlight organizations and further best practice guidelines across the Northwest Toronto Ontario Health Team. So quite an undertaking with the RNAO and our multiple partners.
And a beautiful one.
Yes, it is, Doris. It's just wonderful to be part of that. So I'm going to keep my comments short, and I'm just going to introduce Penny Ratney. She's one of our clinical nurse specialists, and she's going to speak more about the RNAO best practices and how the hospital has used these guidelines during the pandemic. So, Penny?
Thanks, Kim, and many thanks for this opportunity to honor our nurses and all the great work they do. As Kim said, my name is Penny Ratney, and I am one of 2 clinical nurse specialists here at the center. So my role is to provide clinical coverage for patients with complex needs, and I also work closely with nursing staff to support them in meeting their accountabilities to provide person-centered, evidence-informed care. So as a long-term best practice spotlight organization and an early adopter of many best practice guidelines and a partner with RNAO, West Park is well positioned to be effectively responsive to rapidly evolving situations such as COVID-19. Certainly in the midst of adjusting workflows and procedures to accommodate requirements of COVID, we are concurrently committed to maintaining the level of care and safety for patients who are not directly impacted. To this end, our longstanding affiliation with RNAO has allowed us over time to embed many best practices into our standard care provision as the way we do things at West Park. An example of this are BPG-informed assessments, which have been built into our electronic patient record to ensure patient safety and quality of care are maintained for all of our patients. At the same time, our RNAO affiliation supports our responsiveness to patients and families directly impacted by COVID in a situation where there is a level of uncertainty and fear. Implementation of guidelines such as person and family-centered care and the newly launched Palliative Approach to Care BPG promote continued development of therapeutic relationships through engagement with patients and families and allow for identification and evaluation of holistic goals that are centered around the needs of patients and their families. So I think everyone is aware patients who've tested positive for COVID are required to be physically isolated. In keeping with the BPGs and recognizing that care should encompass the whole person, the center certainly has found ways to ensure physical isolation is not compounded by social isolation and has used technologies such as iPads to keep patients connected with family and loved ones. I think overall, being a spotlight organization provides West Park with the opportunity to continuously move practice forward so that when we are faced with unprecedented situations such as COVID, we have the resiliency to respond and to embrace new challenges. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Penny. Doris, I'm going to ask you to perhaps say a few words in regards to the RNAO and BPSOs.
First, I'm going to say a word about you.
Oh.
That we are super proud with the leadership you are providing at West Park. First as Chief Nurse Officer, I remember that. And now as the President and CEO for several years. And I remember when you were at the beginning of the journey with the best practice guidelines as a chief nurse, coming to a meeting with your board for us to just hear what you were doing. And I remember it was a nursing week, Anne-Marie. And you had a newspaper for us, the local newspaper, and it was a whole insert about the work. I will never forget because we were blown away. So Premier, before I say remarks about West Park, I want to introduce, of course, Angela Cooper-Brathwaite, our president. Thank you. I want to introduce Morgan Offart, our president-elect, who is the one that informed me yesterday of Brian Beatty, because Brian was from London and so is Morgan. And I want to introduce, I think I also see Betty from our board. Hi, Betty, this is great to see you. And I hope I didn't miss anyone else from our board, but I'm thrilled. And Irma Jean Bainok, who was actually at the time that we went to your place at RNO. So here you go, Irma Jean. She's back with us for a few months because our director of policy, Premier, and you will know of this initiative, we lended him to, Matt Calway, we lended him to the inner city for the initiative that Minister Elliott, John Tory, RNO, and Inner City Health open for persons experiencing homelessness that are COVID positive. So he's there supporting them in their work, and so is our nurse leader, Lee Chapman. Premier, first I want to thank you for taking those phone calls. It's good to know that we can connect when I need to talk, and that you listen, and that you are absolutely committed for RNO to be fully engaged, involved, and accounted for in the issues that we bring forward, both with Minister Elliott and with Minister Fullerton. And I will make sure I send to Nico the report that we issued yesterday, the ECHO report, which in a nutshell says, keep going with the Ontario Health Teams, just fast forward more and more and at a higher speed. And we are saying to bring long-term care as mandatory sector for Ontario Health Teams. That does not mean that the two ministries need to merge again. That's at all, we're not, that's not the point at all. The point is that they cannot be sidelined anymore by anybody. Now, I'm not saying by policy or political entities or civil servants, by any of us. It shocked us to the core, and I know that you understand that more than anybody else, likely. So I want to thank you for being there, and I want to thank you for being really on the front lines of communication. I think you are a terrific communication, and I ask you to continue to do that. So about the impact of best practice guidelines on West Park, well, and Maria and Kim Cook, the Chief Nurse Officer, already said it, and our colleague Penny that explained so eloquently, so I will not dwell on that. But yes, on the impact of the BPGs on 1,000 organizations, 600 like West Park right here in Ontario, and over 400 now in the rest of Canada and in 15 other countries in the world, supported by their governments. So we don't pay a penny. We do provide, of course, the guidelines, they are online. We do provide active support, and we do get the credit, meaning we, Ontario. So Ontario is in the map, Premier, through this program all over the world, and your team knows that, your team past and present knows that, including civil servants. It just gives us a great source of honor, source of pride, to know that while we develop those guidelines, that many times they stay in other organizations or countries in the shelf. Here, because of the active work of supporting implementation through implementation science and social movement theory, you see the results. I don't need to speak about them, guys, because you do it. You put them to life. We put them in your hands. We give you the tools to implement, but really you put them to the service of patients through the minds, through the hearts, and through the hands of all healthcare professionals. And Minister Fullerton, just so you know, in nursing homes specifically, we train all the personal support workers with the guidelines. So it's not only the regulated staff, but absolutely everybody gets trained together. And that's what we are doing with OHTs now. We are working together. So that, to me personally, as the founder of this program, is what is inspiring the most these days, because we are training all professions together across all sectors, with some sectors like Loft or others that we never had worked before, that are kind of not exactly in the, traditional healthcare sector, and we're training them all together. And I know, Kim, you have been in those training sessions. They're like fire, good fire. Not like COVID-19, they're good fire. They're the fire that countered COVID-19. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Doris. So now we'd like to turn to telling you a little bit about our experience during COVID and letting you hear directly from our frontline staff on the COVID experience. So Kim, perhaps you could just introduce that and the role that you've played relative to being our incident commander.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. As I reflect on the past year and most recent experience with the COVID-19 pandemic, I am really struck by the kindness, compassion, and teamwork demonstrated by our West Park nurses. Nurses are truly nursing the world to health, and at West Park, our world is West Park, our patients, our families, and our teams here, our nurses, everyone. As a Chief Nursing Officer, I've had the honor to lead the nurses at the center. I have also been fortunate to lead the COVID-19 pandemic response at the hospital. As the center's incident commander, throughout the course of the pandemic, I've been called upon to use my professional nursing knowledge, skills, and judgment in a manner that is very much in keeping with this year's Nursing Week's theme. Every decision made ensures the safety of our patients and our families and our staff while promoting health and providing excellence in our care. Throughout the pandemic, we have certainly faced our share of challenges, and I'm so very proud of how our nurses have responded to overcome every obstacle with such courage and professionalism. The nurses really are nothing short of amazing. It has really been humbling to see the nurses working with such difficult times and really with such courage again as they provide that care and support one another too. Our next speaker is Parminder Jawanda. He is our clinical nurse educator, and he's really going to speak a bit about his role in providing clinical education and support to nurses during the pandemic. Parminder?
Thanks, Kim. Good morning. My name is Parminder Jawanda. I'm an RN in a clinical nurse educator role here at West Park. I'm going to talk a little bit about my role as a clinical nurse educator and my role in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. So my primary role as a clinical nurse educator is to develop and deliver evidence-based education programs and facilitate a learning environment for our nurses. From a pandemic perspective, I want to speak about two key areas where clinical education supported the pandemic response and our nurses at the front line. First, as you're aware that guidelines for maintaining patient and healthcare staff safety have been evolving as we move through the pandemic and requiring rapid changes in clinical practice. So the clinical education has been central to ensure that our nurses and clinicians are adapting to the changes so they can safely care for their patients. Some examples: education related to infection prevention and control, COVID-19 testing, personal protective equipment has been instrumental throughout this pandemic, both from the safety perspective and the conservation perspective. Speaking of PPE, I do want to highlight the challenges with PPE and challenges for our nurses and clinicians to adapt from everyday best practices to the modified practices during the pandemic.
Thank you, Parminder. Shall we move on to Trish?
Good morning. Sorry about that. Hello, Premier. Welcome. This is a very unique nursing week, to say the least. My name is Trish Mazza, and I've had the very good fortune to have started here at West Park over 13 years ago now. I started as a temporary bedside nurse on the renowned MPP unit and then was offered a permanent position on the neuro department. Realizing that there's so many opportunities at West Park, I took the plunge and became a float nurse, which enabled me to work throughout the entire hospital with almost every person here. I have to say I gained invaluable experience and developed some lifelong friendships. Every experience propelled me towards the next stage of my nursing career. West Park is incredibly supportive in this respect. The staff, the next stage I actually went to was occupational health. The staff I worked alongside now became my patients, and I have to say occupational health is the foundation to every hospital. They look after the staff so we can safely care for our patients. It's truly a symbiotic relationship. I recently moved from occupational health, but was deployed there for COVID. I am so fortunate to have worked with a team whose every waking moment was devoted to keeping our staff safe. Fielding over 300 calls a day with this tiny team at the peak of the pandemic, working endless hours to keep everyone safe, I was constantly reminded of their devotion, skill, and patience. My current position is completely different once again. I'm currently the Clinical Operational Readiness Coordinator with Campus Development. Premier Ford, you will notice a few changes since you last joined us for their Big Dig celebration not so long ago. Our vision of an integrated campus of care continues right before our eyes, reminding us daily that hard work pays off. Inside, we are battling this pandemic, while outside, we are preparing for a future, and what a future it is. Life goes on. I'm lucky to have a life as a nurse, doing truly what I love. I'm really excited to see what the next chapter brings. I wanted to wish everyone a happy Nursing Week. Thank you for joining our celebration, and together we truly are West Park.
Thank you, Trish. Let's move on to Rochelle.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Rochelle Morris, a registered nurse. I'm currently working on the COVID unit here at West Park Health Center. Despite the apprehension and extreme stress of this pandemic situation, the nursing team remain diligent and patient-focused. We ensure our patients receive optimal and holistic care, encompassing their physical, mental, and emotional health, as well as the family dynamics. For example, close physical monitoring of the patient condition, daily review of lab work, vital signs monitoring, listening to the patient concern, making special accommodation when necessary, as in the case of a palliative patient, monitoring ample communication between patients and family via telephone and FaceTime. All of this were always not easy to accomplish, but however, we overcome these challenges with support and collaboration of the multidisciplinary team and support from everyone. Thank you and happy Nursing Week.
Thank you, Rochelle. Now, Premier and Minister, we're going to move to our Extendicare participants, starting with Elma, who is a staff nurse in the long-term care center.
Good morning, I've been here for long-term care.
Elma, can you just hold on a second? We're having some technical difficulty. Maybe if everyone can just go on mute. Elma, can you try again?
Hello.
Perfect.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Hi, good morning again. My name is Alma Limpiada. I'm one of the RNs here at the Extendicare. I'm an internationally trained nurse from the Philippines. My background in the past, I've been in a med-surg or an ER, but I came to visit West Park Long-Term Care. I fell in love with the old people here, so now I am here for 17 years. Yeah. I'm very honored to be chosen to participate in this session. during this pandemic outbreak. It is a very difficult situation. I myself, I am medically compromised, but I have to make a very difficult situation. It's either to take a leave of absence or stay. But when I look at the residents, family members, and the staff, what we go through, and when our staff started to go positive, I come to think about who will stay, right? It is very challenging in terms of staffing. So I made a decision. I have an 11-year-old daughter that I have to move to my sister, and she's been there for 2 months. I never hugged her for 2 months, to be honest. But I just drop by every day, wave to her, because I am exposed every day, so I have to make that difficult situation. But it is very I'm just happy that I made that decision. Anyway, through this difficult situation that we have in the long-term care, the support of the tremendous support of the family members that I noticed I can't, I salute to them. Before, when they call us, they will just ask, how's my mom? How's my dad? But now when they call almost every day asking us, how are you guys doing? There is a big change. Before, we were not asked, how are we doing? But the first thing that they ask when they call, how are you guys doing? Are you coping well? Be safe. Those words are very supportive and made a different change for us, the staff here at the long-term care. And to continue to communicate with the family members, we use FaceTime. And as you know, you've seen it. Premier Doug Ford, Carla started going to the window to communicate, to see her mother. We continue to do that. We use that system. The families would call us and arrange that if we could bring their family members to the window and just to see them. So it brings happiness to the family as well as to the staff.
Thank you, Elma, and thank you for sharing that personal sacrifice, the example of the sacrifice that you're making. We appreciate it, and our heart is with all of you in the long-term care center. Vinette, perhaps I could turn it over to you.
So good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting us to this event. This is the first year Extended Care has been invited to this event, so I'm really happy and thankful that we have been asked to participate. On the call today I must recognize some of our leaders. So I'll say thank you. And just to introduce myself, I am an internationally trained nurse from the UK, and my background is in community care, skin and wound care, as well as palliative care. So I've been a director of care for many years. In terms of motivating our team, so the staff at West Park, and many have been here for 20 years or more since the opening of the home. And the challenge is certainly outside of COVID, long-term care is always difficult. Now that we've put COVID in the mix, the demands of the role in long-term care, it's doubled. But our staff has certainly shown how committed they are, and by the leaders showing to them how committed we are to them, as well as our residents, it's allowed them to make that concerted effort to come to work on a daily basis. But you can hear from Alma how the contribution and the sacrifice that she has made to come to West Park certainly demonstrate how amazing the team we have here at West Park.
They sure are an amazing team, Vinette, and we thank you very much for your comments. I'm aware that the Premier has just about 5 minutes left, and I wanted to just make a few more comments, and
Yes.
then we'll close so that we can
And thank
get
you.
on your way. Thank you, Vinette.
Thank you.
Premier, I'm also very proud to say that West Park has also contributed to the system response to COVID. So beyond what you've heard about what we're doing on the campus, we've also made a number of contributions at a system level. Firstly, in keeping with your government's action plan for long-term care, we, like many other hospitals, have assumed the role of hospital resource partner to Extendicare, who operate the long-term care home. And we're very glad to be able to support and assist them through this very difficult time. I think the comments that you heard from Elma and Vinette speak loudly to the tremendous effort and dedication that the staff in the long-term care home have demonstrated. We're happy to be at their side, assisting them through this difficult time. Another way that we have contributed to the pandemic response is to create additional acute care capacity by opening 23 new long-term ventilation beds at West Park Hospital so that stable patients who are ventilated in critical care units in acute care can be transferred to West Park, thereby freeing up critical care capacity in the system. And I would like to introduce you to Gayani, who is a staff nurse on the long-term vent unit, who will speak very briefly to her experience in getting us open on these 23 new beds. Gayani?
Hi everyone, good morning Premier. Thanks for this opportunity, and I want to just thank you for the amazing job that you're doing in the leading us in this pandemic. As I said, my name is Gayani Hetiarachi, and I am an RN working on our chronic assisted ventilatory care unit. And I am also one of the RNs that help admit patients to our new expansion, a long-term vented unit. In admitting patients from ICU with increasing complexity into this unit, we had to create in such a short time span to allow to free up the ICU beds was a challenge. However, through teamwork, the nursing staff were able to face these challenges. Many of us going above and beyond to make sure that supplies were available to our co-workers and making sure to remain on site to maintain and pass on information that was necessary apart from our clinical expertise. We were very fortunate to have also a manager who's also a nurse, Angela, who understood the struggles that the nurses would encountered during this process, and she was able to get our supplies in time, in a timely manner for us to be efficient in admitting these patients. The team, I just want to speak to my team. I'm so proud of the part of being a part of this team, who also worked tirelessly to admit these patients and recognize and anticipate some of the anxieties the patients and their families may have in this transition from ICU setting to our LTV unit that they may have because they've never seen this unit and the families weren't allowed to visit. So in order to alleviate some of the anxieties, the nurses took extra time out of their busy schedule already doing all the things that they're supposed to do by connecting patients with their families using FaceTiming, WhatsApp, whatever we could do to make sure the patients were still able to see their loved ones, that they are being well taken care of, and then taking extra time to make sure that the families got daily updates on how their loved ones were doing. So these are some of the examples of my colleagues working really hard to understand what people are going through, and to our, as proud nurses, our contribution to the pandemic. And thank you again.
Thank you, Gayani. Premier and Minister, if you'd like to make any comments or ask a question before Charlie provides some closing well wishes, this would be the time.
I'll say a few words. First of all, happy Nursing Week to all the fabulous nurses. It's incredible. You know, you're the front lines. You're the backbone of the healthcare system, and we're so grateful for your dedication, hard work, sacrifice that you come in every single day, and you put the community, your family ahead of yourselves. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate everything you're doing. I also want to pass on my sincere condolences, and our prayers and thoughts go out to Brian, his family, and his friends. And when I say sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice, and our prayers are with his family. I want to mention, before I start, I have to give a virtual hug. Carla wants me to give a virtual hug to Alma and Penny and Annette, and you know, and also Anne Marie. Thank you for your strong leadership. I was excited when I've been there a couple of times. I was there on the weekend and I saw the construction going. It's going to be an incredible facility, as we say, integrated campus of care. It's going to be state of the art, and we're there for you day in and day out. Parminder, I want to address the PPE situation. That's one of my main focuses. I'm up till literally, when I say midnight, every single night at the office, calling around from Thailand to China to you name it, trying to get the PPE. The good news, and there is light at the end of the tunnel, we have a couple big, large companies that are going to open up here in Ontario to produce the N95 masks and the surgical masks. We have people producing gowns and face shields, because as I've said over and over again, there's never again are we going to rely on foreign countries and foreign leadership to supply us, because we're last on the list. So we're going to make sure we kick this into high gear, and they're doing it right now, actually. So I just want to thank all the great entrepreneurs and companies that have switched over their lines. It's true Ontario spirit. But I'm on this PPE every single day, every minute of the day. That's one of my main focuses. But again, you're all doing an incredible job. I want to give a special thank you to Minister Fullerton and Minister Elliott, both of them. Just work around the clock. They're passionate, they care, and they're doing everything they can to get us through this pandemic and this crisis. They're both incredible leaders, and I just want to thank you. I want to say a special thanks to my very close friend Doris. You know, I love Doris. But I do. We have such...
It's mutual, Premier. Remember when I told you, Premier, that it takes two to tango? My gosh, we are tangoing well, Premier.
Thank you, Doris.
Now I need to teach you truly to tango. Tell your wife.
Well, Doris and I have a special relationship, and we connected the first time we met, and I just absolutely think the world of Doris. And yes, when Doris calls, you answer. There's only two people I get worried, and I love talking to her, is Doris and Hazel McCallion. I start getting nervous because I know something's going on. But I love them both. They're so close to my heart. But again, thank you, everyone, and I'll pass this over to both ministers, Minister Fullerton and Minister Elliott. So thank you, and God bless each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier.
Thank you, Premier.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Premier. And I always say life is about relationships. And I know the Premier is an amazing communicator. And I thank all of you for playing your role and being part of what is a challenging, in many ways, devastating time. And yet you are resilient. You are bringing your hearts and your skills every day. And no matter what those skills are, you are bringing them every day to the best of your abilities. And to me, that is that's what humanity is. And caring for our residents day in, day out. I know the word sacrifice has been mentioned. It truly is. Anyone on the front lines and those who support them on the front lines are making sacrifices every day to provide the care that's needed throughout this pandemic. And my heart goes out to you, and my deepest condolences to Brian, who lost his life, and our other frontline providers who have have also paid that ultimate sacrifice, as the Premier mentioned. But there is tremendous hope, and I see that with your construction, and I see that with your hearts and skills every day that you bring. So I very much appreciate your compassion and dedication. And we were talking before the Premier was on the line about PPEs and seeing how we need to make sure that we can manufacture those here in Ontario. And you've just heard the Premier describe all the work that's going into that. So it's going to take all of us in this. This is a time for caring and compassion, and you are bringing that in spades. So thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, did I hear, Premier, that Minister Elliott is on the line? I didn't realize that.
Yes, I am. It's Christine. It's a great pleasure. I did want to say I've really enjoyed listening to the work that you're doing, and I do want to also give a special thank you to Doris. Doris, you've always been a very strong advocate for Ontario's nurses, frontline healthcare workers, and patients, and you certainly have been an invaluable partner during this COVID-19 pandemic. So
Minister, you were the first one that supported ECHO 1.0 back then. I don't forget that.
Well,
we've been there all the way, all the time.
Well, we've been colleagues and friends for a long time, but
Yes.
But I do want to say that as we confront the growing challenge of COVID-19, we want to make sure that all of you as frontline workers are safe on the front lines. And my condolences also go out to Brian's family. It's tragic to have lost a nurse as part of all of this. But this is, as you indicated at the beginning of the call, a very special nursing week, being on the 200th anniversary of the birth of Florence Nightingale. And I think she has been a strong symbol for all of you with her passion, her dedication, and the really important work she did in making nursing a real profession and bringing the standards and expertise that she did to nursing, which is reflected in the work that all of you do today. It is incredible that you are showing your hard work, there's no question about that, but your professionalism, your dedication, and most of all, your compassion. That shines through in the comments that have been made by everyone. And I want to thank you again for the incredible work that you do. Both on my own behalf, but also on behalf of all of the people of Ontario. You are the heroes in all of this. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Minister Elliott. Charlie, over to you for final remarks.
Well, thanks very much, Anne-Marie. Maybe I can start by just thanking the Premier and Ministers Elliott and Fullerton for showing your support for nurses everywhere. In the province and in West Park in particular. And also thanks for so much, Premier, for helping us get started on this fantastic new facility. We're going to be all so proud of it. Yeah. And we're even proud of the hole in the ground. And also for your government's actions and the responses to the COVID-19 pandemic in Ontario. I don't want to jinx us, but I'm certainly starting to feel a lot better about it than I was 8 weeks ago. And really, thanks to all of the nurses on this call and all of your colleagues for taking the time to share the incredible value of your work and the impact on the patients at West Park both the healthcare center and the long-term care center. You are to echo your words, Minister Elliott, you are our heroes, all of us. We depend on you to keep us safe, and we depend on you to make us healthy when we're not safe. And you're doing a fantastic job on it. I'd like to wish you all Happy Nursing Week. I'm not quite sure that's appropriate wording given what you're going through, but you certainly deserve a very happy Nurses Week. Thank you all so much on behalf of the West Park Board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. So I hope you all have a wonderful day. Again, our deepest appreciation to the Premier and both ministers for joining us, and to RNAO for making this event possible. It was just a fantastic opportunity to step back and reflect on the efforts of our staff, our nursing staff in particular, but all of the frontline staff at the center and the long-term care home. I wish you all a wonderful day, stay healthy, and we'll look forward to the future ahead. Thank you all.
Thank you to you and Marina.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.